Imagine this, a high society wedding, a billionaire groom, a bride in a gown worth more than a house. The room is silent until the grand doors swing open. Two 10-year-old girls walk down the aisle, calm, steady, unstoppable. One carries a folder. The other speaks just 7 words that stop the wedding cold. "We believe you're our father." What happens next? You won't believe it. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop a comment letting us know where in the world you're watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The sky was blue, the flowers were white, the guests were rich. Everhollow Estate was glowing under the afternoon sun, wrapped in satin ribbons and the buzz of camera flashes. Inside the grand ballroom, 100 golden chairs lined up like soldiers. Every guest whispered about how perfect the bride looked and how lucky the groom was. At the center of it all stood Julian Crestmore, tall, calm, and dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. His eyes swept over the glittering crowd, but they didn't really land anywhere. People smiled at him, raised their glasses, but he barely noticed. He was thinking about how strange it all felt. Not bad, just distant. Like he was watching it all from outside himself. Across the aisle walked Marissa Lane, graceful in a shimmering ivory dress that had its own security guard the night before. She was the daughter of a senator and as polished as a diamond. The photographers clicked madly, eager to capture this union of money and power. Julian smiled. It looked real enough. He'd practiced it in the mirror. The ceremony began. The string quartet played. The priest cleared his throat. Everyone leaned forward. "We are gathered here today to join Marissa Lane and Julian Crestmore in the bonds of marriage." Everything was going as planned. Every flower was in place. Every guest was in designer shoes. Every moment choreographed for perfection. Then the doors burst open. At first it was just a sound, a soft thud, like the wind pushing too hard. But when 2 small girls stepped into the aisle, the entire ballroom gasped. They couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Same dresses, same brown curls, same determined expressions. One of them clutched a worn brown folder against her chest, like it was a treasure map. The other held her twin's hand tightly. The security team moved, quickly, too quickly. Guests whispered, cameras turned. But Julian lifted a hand. "Wait." His voice echoed through the room. Even the violinist stopped mid-note. The girls kept walking, not shy or scared, just calm and focused like kids heading to a school presentation. They stopped halfway down the aisle. "We're sorry to interrupt," said the girl with the folder. Her voice didn't shake. "But we have something important to give Mr. Crestmore." A ripple of confusion spread through the crowd like spilled champagne. Marissa turned to Julian, her perfect smile cracking just a little. Julian stepped off the altar, his shoes echoing across the floor. He walked toward the girls, confusion battling curiosity in his eyes. He crouched so they wouldn't have to look up. "I'm Julian. What's this about?" The girl with the folder looked up with big brown eyes that, for some reason, hit Julian like a punch to the chest. "I'm Brielle," she said. "This is my sister Hazel, and we think you're our dad." The ballroom went silent. The kind of silence that sucks the air right out of your lungs. Julian blinked. What?" Hazel stepped forward. "We don't mean to ruin anything, but our mom, she never told you. We found out by accident. Then we found you." Julian's heart began to race. His ears buzzed. The folder in Brielle's hands was shaking now. Slowly, she held it out to him. Inside were pages. Some printed, some handwritten. Photos. A DNA test from one of those home ancestry kits. A picture of a young woman. A name, Dr. Leah Whitmore. Julian stared at it like it might disappear if he blinked. Behind him, Marissa gasped. "Is this some kind of stunt?" she snapped. "This is a wedding. What is going on?" The guests started to murmur. Some had already started pulling out phones. A few were recording. Julian turned, still holding the folder. I need a moment, he said, but Marissa was already storming past him, veil flying behind her like a cape. Enjoy your scandal, she hissed, disappearing through the open, doors with her parents on her heels. Julian turned back to the twins. He looked into their faces that suddenly felt familiar, something in their eyes, the same stubborn spark he used to see in someone else's smile. Leah, he whispered. Brielle nodded. She's our mom. She doesn't know we came, but we had to. We needed to know. Security looked lost. The guests were stunned. One older woman in a red hat fainted. Julian stood up slowly. He looked around the room, at the decorations, the flowers, the guests, the empty altar. And then he looked at the girls. His voice was quiet. Come with me. And just like that, the fairy tale wedding ended. But something real had just begun. The reception area was supposed to be filled with music, champagne, and speeches. Instead, the cake sat untouched, and guests stood in tight clusters whispering about the girls, the folder, and that DNA test. Julian Crestmore wasn't listening to any of it. He had led the twins, Brielle and Hazel, to a private sitting room near the back of the estate. The marble floors and velvet chairs felt too fancy for the moment, but it was quiet, and that's what they needed. He sat across from them, the folder resting on the coffee table between them like a live wire. I need to understand, he said, gently, his voice still carrying that stunned edge from the wedding disaster. Why today? Why like this? Hazel, the quieter one so far, looked at Brielle. Brielle took a breath. We didn't plan it to ruin anything, she said. We found out about you a few months ago. Mom never told us your name. She just said you weren't around. Julian rubbed his temples. Your mom, Leah Whitmore. I haven't heard that name in years. You knew her? Hazel asked, leaning forward, her tone both cautious and hopeful. I did, Julian said. We met during college. She was in med school, smart, kind. We were together for a while, but then life got complicated. Brielle opened the folder and slid out a photo. This was in her memory box. There were letters, too. We found it last spring in the attic. We started asking questions. Julian stared at the photo. It was him, arm around Leah, both smiling under a tree covered in fall leaves. He remembered, that day, they'd had pumpkin pancakes at a little cafe in Boston. She had talked about wanting to help kids. He had talked about building his company. They had both been full of hope. I thought she left, he said quietly. We lost touch after my father got sick. I had to take over the business. I sent letter. I never heard back. Eventually, I assumed she moved on. She tried to find you, Brielle said. That's what Aunt Renee said. Julian blinked. Renee? The door opened and a familiar face stepped in. Renee Walsh, Leah's younger sister, stood there in her black event staff uniform. She looked embarrassed but determined. Hello, Julian, she said softly. You were here. At the wedding. I work for the event company. I didn't plan to let them do this, but they were going to find a way no matter what. I figured it was better if I was there to keep them safe. Julian stood. Renee. Why didn't Leah ever reach me? She tried a lot. Calls, letters. She even came to New York once to your office, but she never got past reception. His eyes narrowed. That doesn't make sense. I never knew. No one told me. It was your mother, Renee said carefully. I think Lucinda had a hand in keeping Leah away. Julian sat down hard. Lucinda Crestmore, his mother, fierce, protective, focused on legacy and image above all else. She'd never liked Leah, said she was a distraction. Not our kind of person. Julian closed his eyes. I didn't know. No one thought you did, Renee said. Leah believed you'd moved on. She didn't want to chase someone who didn't want to be found. So she raised the girls on her own. He looked over at Brielle and Hazel. Both sat straight, eyes watching him carefully. Why now? He asked again, voice softer. We just wanted to know you, Hazel said. We knew it was a long shot. But when we saw you were getting married, we didn't want it to be too late. Julian exhaled. And your mom? She doesn't know you're here? Brielle shook her head. She thinks we're at a science camp. He almost laughed, but it came out more like a sigh. I need to talk to her, he said. I need to see her face and hear the truth from her. She's at a conference in Chicago, Renee said. Medical stuff. She's speaking, actually. But I'll call her, she needs to know. Julian looked at the twins again. And you? You came all this way on your own? We planned it, Brielle said. Even made backup plans. We're good at logistics. Julian smiled despite the You sound a lot like your mother. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Julian reached into the folder and pulled out the test results. They weren't official, just ancestry matches. But even a glance told him what his heart already suspected. They were his. He didn't need a lab to tell him. He could see it in their eyes. He could hear it in their courage. I'm sorry I wasn't there, he said softly. I didn't know. But I do now. Hazel looked at him. So what happens next? Julian sat up a little straighter. I guess we find out. Together. It was late afternoon when Julian Crestmore pulled his car into a snowy driveway in Burlington, Vermont. The house was small, neat, and warm-looking, with smoke curling from the chimney and snow piled gently on the front steps. There were two. Bicycles leaned against the porch rail and a snowman in the yard wearing a scarf that looked hand-knitted. This was where she lived. Leah Whitmore, the girl he once loved, the woman he hadn't seen in 10 years. The mother of his children. Julian turned off the car engine but didn't get out right away. His heart was thudding in his chest. His palms were damp. He had closed million-dollar deals with less nerves than this. He stepped out and climbed the steps, his dress shoes crunching in the snow. Before he could knock, the door opened. There she was. Leah stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a thick sweater wrapped tightly around her. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and there were tired lines around her eyes. But her expression? That was sharp as ever. Hello, Julian, she said without a trace of warmth. Leah, he replied. No. She cut him off, stepping outside and closing the door behind her. Not in front of the girls, he blinked. They're here? They came home this morning, she said. After the wedding. Julian rubbed the back of his neck. I wanted to call. I didn't know how. Renee, yes. Renee told me everything, she said, voice tight. About how they found your name, about how they tracked you down, about how they crashed your wedding. She looked up at him. What she didn't tell me is why you never tried to find us. Julian stared at her. I did. Leah, I swear I did. After my father got sick, I was drowning. I wrote, I called, I never heard back. I was calling you, she snapped. I mailed letters. I went to your office. Your mother told security I was nobody, that you didn't want to see me. Julian's face fell. My mother. Leah, I didn't know. I figured that out, she said. Eventually, they stood in silence for a moment, the cold biting between them. The snow started to fall again, soft and silent. I would have been there, he said finally. If I had known. I would have raised them with you. Been there for every step, every science fair, every scraped knee. Leah's eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. You weren't, she said. I was alone. I had to fight for every hour of sleep, every cent to pay for daycare, every ounce of respect at the hospital while people looked at me like I was a charity case. I worked double shifts. I missed birthdays. I did the best I could. I believe you, Julian said softly. You did more than I could have. Another pause. They're amazing, he added. Brielle and Hazel, smart, brave, kind. I see you in them. They're a lot like you too, she said. Brielle talks like a boardroom executive. Hazel can argue like a lawyer. He smiled. She didn't. I'm not here to take them, Julian said quickly. I'm not trying to replace you or make decisions for them. I just want to know them, to be there if you'll let me. Leah exhaled. It wasn't a sigh of surrender. But it wasn't a door slammed shut either. They want to see you, she said. That's clear, they've been talking about nothing else. I'd like that, he said. Fine, she said, but it's on my terms. We go slow. No big promises. No sudden visits, no surprises. I'm still their mother, I always have been. Of course, Julian said. She turned and opened the door, then looked over her shoulder. You coming in, or are you planning to freeze out there? Inside, the house was filled with warmth and the faint smell of cinnamon. The living room was lived in, books, toys, half-folded laundry on the couch. Julian stood awkwardly in the entryway until a shout rang out. Dad! Hazel barreled into him, followed, closely by Brielle. They hugged him tightly, and for a moment the world stopped spinning. He knelt down to meet their eyes. Hi, he said, suddenly breathless. You found us? Brielle said, eyes bright. No, he replied. You found me. That night, they ate spaghetti on mismatched plates, played cards by the fire, and listened to Hazel explain how snow crystals form. Leah watched from the kitchen, arms folded, unsure whether to smile or scream. Later, when the girls were asleep, she stood beside Julian at the window. You're not going to disappear again? He looked at her seriously. Not if I can help it. She gave a small nod. Then we'll see how this goes. Outside, snow fell quietly on the world they were slowly trying to rebuild. Spring arrived in Vermont with gentle warmth. The snow melted into puddles, birds returned to their nests, and tiny green buds poked from the trees. In the small town of Burlington, the sun seemed to shine a little brighter over a home where a new beginning was quietly blooming. Julian Crestmore sat on a picnic blanket in Leah Whitmore's backyard, watching Brielle and Hazel pick wildflowers near the fence. Their laughter filled the air as they tried to weave petals into crowns. Julian had never imagined a moment like this. Not long ago, he'd stood in a ballroom, ready to start a different life, one built on image and expectation. That life was gone, and he didn't miss it. Leah stepped outside carrying lemonade in a glass pitcher. She wore a soft blue dress and had tucked her hair behind her ears. Her smile was cautious but not cold. They're making you a crown, she said, nodding at the twins. Julian raised an eyebrow. A crown? They say every real dad gets one, Leah added with a smirk. He smiled. Well, in that case, I'd better wear it proudly. As the girls ran over and placed the slightly lopsided crown of daisies on his head, Julian felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Over the past months, he'd changed. Not just his address, but everything. He had stepped back from the company he'd built, hiring a new CEO and taking on a smaller role. It shocked his board, worried investors, and confused the media. But he didn't care. His days of chasing numbers were over. He was chasing something real now. Family. That afternoon, the backyard turned into a small garden ceremony. There was no velvet aisle, no photographers, no grand piano. Just a handful of family and friends, a few folding chairs, homemade cupcakes, and flower petals on the grass. Julian stood at the center in a linen shirt, his sleeves rolled up. Leah walked toward him barefoot, her daughters on either side, each holding a bouquet of forget-me-nots in lavender. She didn't wear white. She wore green, the color of growth. In the front row sat Julian's mother, Lucinda. She was quieter these days, gentler. Time had humbled her. She'd apologized to Leah weeks ago, and not with words alone. She had listened, admitted fault, and even offered to help with the girls' school science fundraiser. Now she dabbed at her eyes as her granddaughters giggled beside her. Julian's best friend, Marcus, acted as the officiant. He wasn't licensed, but nobody cared. This wasn't about papers or permission. We're not here to start something new, Marcus said. We're here to honor something that never truly ended. A bond stretched by time, challenged by distance, but never broken. Julian took Leah's hands. I didn't know what I was missing, he said, until two brave girls showed up at my wedding and handed me the truth. I owe them everything, and I owe you the life we never got to build, until now. Leah's voice trembled, but her gaze was steady. You taught me love once, she said, and then life took us in different directions. But love found a way back, through our daughters, through forgiveness, through every step we've taken to find our way again. The girls handed them simple silver rings, each engraved with a single word: choose. Because that was what they had done. Not fallen into love, but chosen it, chosen each other, chosen this family. The crowd clapped as they kissed. Hazel whistled. Brielle shouted. Finally, after the ceremony, everyone gathered for music, laughter, and homemade food under strings of lights. Leah's sister Renee brought her famous peach pie. Julian grilled burgers. The girls performed a silly dance they made up that morning. And, later, under the stars, Julian and Leah shared a slow dance on the lawn, the kind they used to dream about during college. Still remember the steps? Leah whispered. I think I was born for this moment, Julian whispered back. As the evening cooled and guests began to leave, Julian sat on the porch, watching the girls chase fireflies. Leah sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. Do you think they'll remember this day? She asked. I hope so, he said. But even if they don't, I hope they always remember what it meant. That no matter how messy the past gets, love is still possible. Forgiveness is still possible. They taught us that, Leah said. They did, Julian agreed, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure they never doubt how much they're loved. A firefly floated past, glowing softly like a secret. The girls laughed in the distance. Leah's hand found his, and for the first time in years there were no questions, no what-ifs, only petals under their feet, promises in their hearts, and a future blooming quietly around them.